This is the story of former child actress Alexa Nikolas. The narrative is polarizing as it is complex, where her legacy shifts depending on who you ask. To some, she's a fearless advocate, using her platform to expose abuse and champion survivors. To others, she's the very thing she claims to fight against, a bully cloaked in activism, weaponizing her cause to silence dissent and deflect criticism. Is Alexa Nikolas a selfless voice for the voiceless, or a self-serving performer wrapped in righteousness? A target of hate, or someone who confuses accountability with persecution? This is both sides of the story. Part 1, The Advocate, delves into Alexa's version of events as the founder of Eat Predators, an advocacy collective she claims to have built from the ground up, fueled by her passion for supporting survivors. She presented herself as a crusader against abuse, dedicating her life to exposing predators and empowering victims. But less than 2 years later, she claimed she had been forced into silence, not by the system she fought against, but by an onslaught of bullying and harassment from within the very communities she sought to protect. In this part, we'll explore how Alexa shaped her identity as a champion for survivors and examine the obstacles she says derailed her mission. But as the line between advocacy and antagonism blurred, a deeper question emerged. Was it her mission to eat predators, or did she decide to eat survivors instead? Part 2, The Other Side, shifts the lens to those who argue that Alexa didn't step back because of harassment, but because she suppressed criticism and silenced voices within the survivor community itself. As control of her narrative slipped, the people she tried to quiet began speaking out, and this time people were listening. We'll examine allegations of hypocrisy, manipulation, and double standards that chipped away at her image as an advocate. Was Eat Predators truly about confronting abusers, or did it become a platform that consumed the very survivors it claimed to uplift? The next video, Part 3, will explore a different facet of Alexa's story, the allegations she made against her ex-husband, Canadian musician and Rye frontman Michael Milosh. This is not just a story about activism. It's a story about power, perspective, and the fine line between advocacy and control. Welcome, in my name the truth lies, and who is playing the charade? Eat Predators describes itself as a, quote, powerful movement forged by the unwavering spirit of activist, actress, and sexual abuse survivor Alexa Nikolas, end quote. According to its website, its mission is to bring an end to the pervasive cover-up of sexual abuse and predatory behavior within the music and entertainment industry. The movement leverages social media campaigns and public demonstrations outside major corporations suspected of enabling predators. Alexa attributes Eat Predators' growth to the unity of survivors and allies, all sharing the goal of advocating for accountability, justice, and survivor support. We'll explore what this advocacy entails shortly, but to truly understand what led Alexa to dedicate her life to this cause, we need to rewind to 2004, to the moments that shaped everything. In 2004, 12-year-old Alexa beat out thousands of hopefuls to land the role of Nicole Bristow on Zoe 101. She was understandably thrilled to play the bubbly, ditzy, and slightly boy-crazy best friend to Jamie Lynn Spears' Zoe, a dynamic that worked perfectly on-screen. Off-screen, however, things were far from harmonious. Alexa quickly found herself being relentlessly bullied and outcast, struggling to form friendships with her cast and crew. The bullying during Season 1 became so severe that Kristen Herrera, who played Dana, left the show before Season 2 started. Herrera's departure paved the way for Victoria Justice to join the cast in the role of Lola. Alexa initially saw this as a chance to have a friend on set, something she yearned for as a child who had been homeschooled most of her life. But her optimism was short-lived. By the end of the season, Victoria and Alexa found themselves on opposite sides of a rift. After Victoria formed an alliance with Jamie Lynn, Alexa found herself completely and cruelly isolated again. According to Alexa, Jamie Lynn's manipulative behavior extended beyond the set, as she falsely portrayed herself as the victim of Alexa's alleged mistreatment, allegedly leveraging her much older, world-famous pop star sister, Britney Spears, to orchestrate an ambush. On the final day of filming Season 2, Alexa was lured into Jamie Lynn's trailer alone, unaware that Britney Spears was waiting inside. What followed was a confrontation in which Britney bullied Alexa, warning her that she'd never work in the industry again unless she stopped treating her little sister so poorly. By the time Alexa escaped the locked trailer, she was hysterical, vomiting, and traumatized. Though Britney Spears would later regret her actions and publicly apologize, the incident left Alexa emotionally shattered. When her mother found her, she was curled into a fetal position, sobbing uncontrollably. The harassment only escalated. Alexa's co-stars weren't just bullying her. They had turned the entire set against her, to the point that even crew members and the showrunner began treating her as an outcast. The situation had finally reached a boiling point. Alexa's mother demanded a meeting with Nickelodeon executives and the showrunner, the now infamous and disgraced Dan Schneider, the person responsible for the careers of Ariana Grande, Amanda Bynes, Drake Bell, and Jeanette McCurdy, to name a few. However, 13-year-old Alexa was advised by her lawyer to attend the meeting alone, without parental or legal protection. According to Alexa, what followed was abuse at the hands of Schneider and the executives behind closed doors. It would be the last time she ever saw Schneider, and the last time she would ever step foot on a Nickelodeon property. After leaving Zoe 101, Alexa took on small roles in shows like Mad Men and Fear the Walking Dead, as well as a minor role in a made-for-TV remake of Children of the Corn, but she never landed another major recurring role. For years, Alexa's public persona suggested she had left Hollywood behind for a more idyllic life. In 2012, she married 34-year-old Canadian musician Michael Milosh, frontman of Rye, known professionally as Milosh. Her last acting credit would be the year after they married in 2013. Their social media presence painted a picture of a deeply affectionate couple traveling the world as part of his tours. To outsiders, Alexa seemed happy, besotted, and carefree. But behind the curated snapshots and romanticized captions, a far darker reality was unfolding, one that would eventually push Alexa toward the advocacy work that would define her future. Much like the majority of idyllic lives being shown on social media, all was not what it seemed, and in 4 short years, they had separated in 2016. Their dynamic evolved into a more complex and contentious one, resulting in Alexa sitting down with Verse magazine in 2018, where she spoke candidly about the beginnings of their relationship. The details of that interview played a pivotal role in what's to come. In 2019, the former cast members of Zoe 101 had an informal reunion, sharing photos of the nostalgic moment on social media. Fans were delighted to see the photos, but 2 absences stood out. The star of the series, Jamie Lynn Spears, was noticeably missing, but it was Alexa's absence that would spark an emotional reaction that turned into headline news in the entertainment world. After Alexa came across these photos on social media, she posted a video on Instagram describing how the photos had reignited wounds from her time on set 2 decades prior. Her emotional post resonated deeply with her followers, many of whom expressed heartbreak over her vulnerability. But instead of allowing the pain to silence her, Alexa promised to share her truth with the world. True to her word, she'd go live on Instagram several days later, wine glass in hand, to answer questions posed by her friend and business partner, Mika Gray, about her experiences growing up on the set of a Schneider-produced show, and explaining how the bullying had a profound effect on her life. She didn't hold back and described how she was tormented on set by everyone from Jamie Lynn Spears, Kristen Herrera, Victoria Justice, and even Dan Schneider. This raw account captured attention and left viewers intrigued to hear more from her. This was also due in part to Jamie Lynn being featured prominently in the news around this time for her perceived lack of support for the Free Britney movement, and Britney's fans were eager to jump on information that didn't paint Jamie Lynn in a good light. About a year later, in November 2020, Alexa and Mika Gray announced they were more than friends and business partners and had embarked on the life-changing journey of parenthood together. When they welcomed their first child to the world, Alexa says the birth of her daughter gifted her the courage to confront another deeply buried truth: the abuse and grooming she'd endured in her marriage to Milos. Through a 48-part series Alexa posted on Instagram that she titled Groomed by the Groom, she offered her followers a deeply personal look at her perspective of their abusive relationship, which she described as both exploitative and torturous. As a reminder, we'll review Groomed by the Groom in detail in the next video, Part 3. But for now, we'll briefly unpack how Alexa wrote an open letter and detailed how 31-year-old Milos began a relationship with her when she was just 16. Though they wouldn't meet in person until Alexa turned 18, she alleges that he groomed her over the course of a 2-year pen-pal relationship with the intentions of sex, a green card, and professional success. Alexa detailed how she'd made a discovery years after they were married that reframed her marriage as transactional instead of one born out of unity and love as she'd previously believed. Several months later, in May 2021, YouTuber Sloan covered her Groomed by the Groom series in a video titled, "Why Isn't Alexa Nikolas' Ex-Husband in Jail for What He Did to Her?" Though Alexa didn't appear in the video, Sloan amplified her story to a much wider audience with his overview of the accusations and sparked further conversation about her fight for justice and public condemnation of Milos. Alexa's willingness to publicly share her experiences was undoubtedly brave, but her narrative raised some questions that we'll take an in-depth look at in Part 3. As Alexa's advocacy gained momentum, Britney Spears publicly spoke out against her conservatorship for the first time about a month after Sloan's video, sparking a global conversation about her treatment and rights. Her testimony hinted at an estrangement with Jamie Lynn, and a rift that would draw new scrutiny to their relationship as sisters. Amid these seismic events, Alexa's life also underwent significant changes. Shortly after marrying Mika Gray, she filed a lawsuit against her ex-husband Milos, accusing him of sexual battery, gender violence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violations of the California Civil Rights Act. 3 months later, the Spears conservatorship was officially terminated, but the drama between the Spears sisters was far from over. Jamie Lynn's memoir, titled Things I Should Have Said, reignited controversy when she briefly referenced Alexa in its pages. In a shocking twist, Jamie Lynn deflected Alexa's long-standing bullying allegations back onto her, portraying herself as the victim. Britney, however, quickly came to Alexa's defense. Despite having already issued a public apology for her past actions on the Zoe 101 set, Britney came forward and admitted that Jamie Lynn had misrepresented the situation to her all those years earlier, leading Britney to confront and intimidate Alexa, then a minor, a mistake Britney openly regretted. The public tension between the Spears sisters helped to further amplify interest in Alexa's story, as many of Britney's supporters were already critical of Jamie Lynn's perceived inaction during her sister's conservatorship and her continued exploitation of her sister. These supporters then rallied behind Alexa. The narrative surrounding Jamie Lynn's actions, both past and present, only deepened, intertwining with Alexa's advocacy and experiences. Meanwhile, Alexa's Groomed by the Groom series was quietly removed from her Instagram, presumably at the advice of her legal counsel to safeguard her lawsuit. While Alexa remained silent about the ongoing legal proceedings, she continued to confront broader systemic issues with unrelenting determination. Alexa's activism took a decisive and audacious turn when she discovered that musician Diplo would be DJing an event in Los Angeles for the Eat the Rich movement. Seizing the moment, Alexa crafted a poster emblazoned with the phrase, "Eat Predators," a sharp and deliberate critique that simultaneously called out Diplo, who had been accused by multiple women of predatory behavior, while subverting the event's name. This bold act of defiance became the genesis of a broader movement under the Eat Predators banner, one that would grow into a series of high-profile protests. Diplo, also a close friend of Milos, was a natural first focus for Alexa's campaign, tying her personal experiences to a larger mission. This protest embodied her commitment to tackling both systemic abuse and individual accountability, signaling a fearless and intersectional fight against exploitation in all its forms. In November 2022, Alexa's voice gained even greater reach as she appeared on two podcasts, Real Pod with Victoria Garrick and Vulnerable with Christy Carlson Romano. Both platforms offered her a safe space to share her story, but it was her appearance on Carlson Romano's podcast that carried unique significance. Carlson Romano, best known for her iconic roles as Ren Stevens on Disney's Even Stevens and voicing Kim from Disney's Kim Possible, made her Vulnerable podcast a place for prominent former child actors to share their unique and often negative experiences growing up in the entertainment industry. Carlson Romano was also vocal about her own challenges in the industry and vowed to advocate for safer conditions for children in the industry moving forward. This pairing felt especially poignant as Alexa had played a younger version of Ren Stevens earlier in her own career, creating a powerful full-circle moment. Feeling a rare sense of safety with her, Alexa opened up with unfiltered honesty by revisiting some of the most harrowing chapters of her life. The conversation took a deeply personal turn as she reflected on her abusive marriage with Milos, back to the vulnerabilities instilled during her years as a child actress. Alexa recounted the insidious cycles of grooming and exploitation, painting a vivid picture of manipulation and the profound scars left behind. She was equally vocal about the challenges she'd faced while working on Zoe 101, revealing the painful reality of strained relationships with her co-stars and the traumatic experience of being reprimanded by an older Britney Spears as a child. She also shared unvarnished accounts of the isolation she experienced after Victoria Justice and Jamie Lynn Spears had formed an alliance, a dynamic that intensified her sense of alienation, which she characterized as suffocating. With the same candor, she detailed the origins of Eat Predators, which she explained she'd single-handedly built from the ground up with little more than determination and a vision for change. She recounted how she built the platform with little outside support, transforming her pain into a call to action. She also described the logo for Eat Predators, admitting her husband designed it in under 5 minutes, despite its suspicious resemblance to one of the famous Eat the Rich logos, complete with the signature red lips. Her aspirations for the movement felt bold and inspiring, driven by a commitment to confront entrenched systems of power head-on, underpinned by both a refusal to let her past define her future and a dedicated lifelong commitment to advocacy work. But it was one revelation in particular that left Carlson Romano visibly shaken when Alexa detailed the chilling account of being abused alone in a back room by Schneider and other Nickelodeon executives. Despite Carlson Romano's insistence that she was familiar with Alexa's experiences, this reaction was one of genuine shock, as though hearing about the Schneider abuse for the first time. Carlson Romano reinforced the idea that she was there to listen, but only wanted Alexa to share what she was comfortable sharing publicly. Alexa spoke candidly about how those painful experiences had reshaped the trajectory of her life, reflecting that while acting had once been her envisioned legacy, her true calling had emerged in the form of advocacy. She vowed a lifelong mission to challenge injustice and to amplify the voices of the silenced, using protests to bring much-needed awareness to a cause that had been carefully hidden away as a dirty secret in the industry. Despite the weight of the topics, the episode was filled with moments of laughter and lightness, a testament to the rapport between Alexa and Carlson Romano. It was clear Alexa felt a rare sense of ease and comfort during their conversation, and treated the experience as both cathartic and enjoyable, at least as enjoyable as such a deeply personal discussion could allow. The balance of levity and gravity underscored Alexa's resilience. as well as her ability to find moments of connection and humor amidst the most difficult truths. With an opportunity to redefine her legacy, it was clear she would no longer be remembered as Alexa Nikolas, former child actress, and instead Alexa Nikolas, leader of Eat Predators, emphasizing that this was not a fleeting chapter, but a defining movement she intended to dedicate her life to. With over 200,000 followers on Instagram, Alexa's established name and strong social media presence were undoubtedly powerful tools in amplifying Eat Predators, and she took advantage of this following by using her account to share updates on her weekly protests and to rally support for her cause. With Alexa being a creative artist, she recognized art's potential to challenge societal norms and ignite critical conversations. Blending art with activism, she and Mika designed creative and striking protest signs that conveyed their messages with clarity and impact, resonating with both the public and her online following using a concept called artivism. Since Eat Predators was solely Alexa's vision and sustained by Mika's unwavering support, the couple took immense pride in the grassroots nature of their work. From brainstorming protest sign designs to printing and painstakingly assembling them by hand each week, they managed every detail. These efforts culminated protests outside major institutions and organizations accused of shielding predators and silencing survivors through intimidation tactics like NDAs and defamation threats. These institutions, such as Nickelodeon and the Church of Scientology, became focal points for their artivism and reflected their determination to confront the powerful entities that perpetuate cycles of abuse. Alexa's relentless commitment and the movement's growing momentum highlighted the transformative power of grassroots action paired with a resolute refusal to back down. Eventually, Alexa realized that she could also harness YouTube as a powerful platform to amplify her movement. In March 2023, she launched the Eat Predators YouTube channel and began streaming discussions. As her subscriber count steadily climbed, so did her ability to connect with an engaged community eager to support her cause. It was through impactful discussions on YouTube that Alexa emphasized the urgent need for systemic reform in the entertainment industry. Despite Alexa's pursuit of justice and her message that even the darkest stories could inspire change, the financial burden of sustaining Eat Predators fell entirely on her and Mika's shoulders. From the cost of the ink for the protest signs, to transportation expenses for moving participants to and from demonstration sites, and even providing basic necessities like water for those protesting, every expense was funded out of their own pockets. Demonstration sites, and even providing basic necessities like water for those protesting, every expense was funded out of their own pockets. While these sacrifices highlighted their unwavering dedication to the movement, the financial strain was unsustainable. No matter how passionate their commitment, shouldering the entire cost of a growing advocacy effort alone was infeasible in the long run, threatening the very survival of the movement they had worked so hard to build. Recognizing their potential for supporters to contribute to the sustainability of their movement, they launched a Patreon account and activated YouTube memberships. In turn, they offered exclusive benefits to their loyal backers. In these early stages of Eat Predators, it seemingly flourished with the help of a small but dedicated team of people working behind the scenes. This group helped moderate live chats, facilitate book clubs, and managed the influx of survivors seeking support. While maintaining the organization's Discord and Patreon accounts in alignment with Alexa's advocacy goals, their efforts allowed the movement to foster a sense of community and provide vital resources for those in need and broaden the movement's reach. As the movement grew, many of the responsibilities shifted primarily to people like Alexa's mother, Alexandra, who moderated her streams, and her husband, Mika, who acted as a producer behind the scenes, both reinforcing the family's deep personal investment in the cause. Their dedication ensured the channel's seamless operation and amplified its impact. Although Alexa rarely featured interviews on her YouTube channel, she became widely recognized for her incisive exposés on individuals accused of predatory behavior. She often highlighted the significance of her channel's name, referring to the investigations as digesting predators, a clever and deliberate wordplay that underscored their mission and made the cause memorable. Beyond these investigations, she also explored trending topics relevant to her advocacy, incorporating reaction videos and cultural commentary to engage a broader audience. Her stories about being bullied on the set of Zoe 101 and groomed by Milos remained a central focus as well. One of her most impactful reactions was a stream in which she'd reacted to the 2021 sentencing of Drake Bell. Bell was another former child actor, best known for his role as Drake in the Nickelodeon and Schneider-produced show Drake and Josh. Bell pleaded guilty to charges after being arrested for child endangerment, stemming from allegations that he'd groomed a fan starting when she was just 12, and eventually culminated in him physically assaulting her backstage at one of his concerts when she was just 15 and he was 35. Alexa's candid and thought-provoking analysis connected Bell's sentencing to the broader systemic issues within the entertainment industry. Her ability to combine personal insight, cultural critique, and advocacy solidified her channel as a vital platform for raising awareness and sparking change. The case drew widespread attention due to the disturbing nature of the allegations and the involvement of another prominent former child star, and Alexa was quick to point out the cyclical nature of abuse, as she'd also shared on her Vulnerable podcast with Christy Carlson Romano. Complicating Bell's victim's situation further, the trial took place when COVID restrictions required court proceedings to be streamed entirely online. This inadvertently led to the victim's identity being exposed by channels restreaming the trial because she was no longer a minor at the time of the sentencing. While most ethical, experienced, and compassionate content creators take great care to blur victims' faces, especially in cases involving minors, Alexa failed to do so. Despite the misstep likely being due to inexperience and not from malicious intent, it revealed a critical oversight that Alexa's decision to show the victim risked further exposing her to more scrutiny, and underscored both her inexperience in advocacy work and her struggle to fully consider the perspectives of those she sought to protect. This moment served as a sobering reminder of the delicate balance required to expose injustices and demand sensitive issues impacting survivors were handled with the utmost care. It also highlighted the growing pains of someone navigating the complexities of public advocacy, where even the most well-meaning efforts can have unintended consequences. For Alexa, this should have been an early lesson in the importance of approaching such work with a deep sense of responsibility instead of passion alone. Although Alexa's background in acting occasionally betrayed moments where her delivery felt performative, when she digested Bell, her empathy for his victim was obvious. This was likely due to the clear parallels between the survivor's circumstances with Bell and her own with Milos, as the two stories were very similar. But Alexa's fearlessness and courage didn't just extend to exposing predators. It also encompassed holding those she believed enabled or supported those predators accountable, even when it meant severing ties with former allies. This became evident in her public fallout with Christy Carlson Romano, after Romano hosted Corey Feldman as a guest on a 2022 episode of her Vulnerable podcast. Corey Feldman was once a successful and celebrated child actor, known for his iconic roles in movies like Gremlins, The Goonies, and The Lost Boys. As an adult, he became one of Hollywood's most vocal critics, speaking out about the abuse he'd endured in the industry as a child. However, his advocacy became increasingly complicated when troubling allegations surfaced about Corey's Angels, an organization he founded and promoted as a safe haven for aspiring female entertainers. Instead of providing genuine support, Feldman was accused of prioritizing his own interests over the well-being of the participants. Further complicating his narrative, multiple women, and even his former bus driver, came forward with allegations of predatory behavior, casting doubt on his role as a protector and raising serious questions about the blurred line between survivor and perpetrator. For Alexa, Carlson Romano's decision to platform Feldman was more than a lapse in judgment, but also a betrayal of the principles she had advocated for during their conversation on Vulnerable. Her willingness to confront even those closest to her highlighted her unyielding dedication to her cause and further cemented her reputation as a relentless voice in the fight against abuse and complicity within the industry. Alexa's main point of contention with Carlson Romano was her decision to host Feldman in the first place, seeing it as hypocritical and a harmful choice that betrayed survivors, including herself. What had once been a seemingly trusted partnership unraveled into a public fallout. Alexa's supporters appreciated her unwavering dedication to exposing uncomfortable truths, even at the expense of personal or professional relationships. Despite Alexa's outrage, she initially approached Carlson Romano privately, highlighting the troubling allegations against Feldman, including the claims that he'd exploited and abused women. She further urged Carlson Romano to take a stand by removing the episode, explaining how harmful it was for survivors like herself to learn that they'd shared a platform with an alleged predator. Instead of condemning his actions, for 6 months, Christy Carlson Romano left Alexa's messages unread, and the deafening silence left Alexa feeling both hurt and frustrated. When private outreach failed, Alexa turned to social media, applying public pressure to hold Carlson Romano accountable for what she saw as a failure to condemn harmful actions. Alexa urged Carlson Romano to delete the Feldman episode and to donate a portion of the proceeds from her episode of Vulnerable to PAVE, an organization that advocates for survivors. This, Alexa argued, would serve as a form of restitution for triggering her by having to share a platform with an alleged predator and for deceiving her into believing Vulnerable was a safe space. Initially, this tactic seemed like a victory. Feldman's episode was quietly removed from streaming platforms, but Alexa's relief was short-lived. What followed was a revelation that deeply wounded her and cast a long shadow over what she thought had been a small triumph. When Carlson Romano removed Feldman's episode, she removed Alexa's episode without warning or explanation. Alexa was incensed since she'd shared her deeply personal trauma on Vulnerable in good faith. Carlson Romano's decision to erase her story felt like a profound betrayal that undermined the values Vulnerable purported to represent. Taking to social media once again, Alexa expressed her heartbreak and frustration on Eat Predators, visibly emotional and crying as she called out Carlson Romano's blatant hypocrisy. How could someone claim to champion survivors while giving a platform to someone like Feldman and punishing Alexa for speaking up? Alexa further accused Christy Carlson Romano of exploiting the traumas of her peers, many of them former child actors, for personal gain. She claimed that Carlson Romano not only expected her guests to be openly vulnerable about their traumatic experiences, but also capitalized on their stories beyond her podcast. Teaming up with her husband, Brendan Rooney, Carlson Romano co-founded Podco, a company designed to tap into the childhood nostalgia movement. Alexa alleged that Podco encouraged former child stars to launch their own podcasts under the guise of empowerment, while the couple profited off their shared histories and painful experiences. Podco became the parent company to several nostalgia-driven podcasts, including Full House Rewind with the cast members from Full House, Wizards of Waverly Pod, featuring the cast of Wizards of Waverly Place, and Ned's Declassified Podcast Survival Guide, with the original cast from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Unlike Eat Predators, the Podco podcasts did not aim to honor the past. They monetized it, turning childhood nostalgia into entertainment and profit. In response, Alexa launched a new segment with Eat Predators called No More Nostalgia, which specifically criticized the exploitation of nostalgia for personal and corporate gain. While Eat Predators was technically a company and not a nonprofit, Alexa viewed her role in the organization differently. The work she was doing was both emotionally and physically draining, and the movement was entirely supported by its followers, not corporate sponsors. For Alexa, accepting sponsorships would mean being beholden to corporate interests, which clashed with her mission of uncompromising advocacy. She had no desire to shape her message to please sponsors, something she believed diluted the integrity of movements like hers. But the issue with Corey Feldman pushed Alexa's frustrations to new heights. Carlson Romano defended hosting Feldman on Vulnerable by pointing out that he had never been convicted of any crimes. But to Alexa, this defense rang hollow. She believed that survivors sharing their experiences with alleged predators should be enough to take a public stand. In fact, during her own appearance on Vulnerable, Alexa had spoken about the cyclical nature of abuse and emphasized the responsibility of advocates to break that cycle. To her, Carlson Romano's decision to give Feldman a platform didn't just contradict those principles. It perpetuated a very cycle of abuse they had discussed and re-traumatized her by placing an alleged predator on the same show where she had shared her own story. Despite the public backlash and Alexa's calls for accountability, Carlson Romano remained defiant. In the end, both Feldman's and Alexa's episodes of Vulnerable remained off the streaming platforms, leaving their conflict unresolved and their audiences divided. Alexa loved advocating for survivors, and by many accounts, she was good at it too. She was proud of being a trailblazer in advocacy, even gifting the community with entirely original, never-before-heard slogans like "Power to Survivors" and "Survivors United will never be divided." These rallying cries quickly became synonymous with her brand of activism, a testament to her unparalleled ability to string together the most revolutionary of words. She explained that it was a privilege to be the first survivor to tell other survivors' stories, heroically rescuing them from the well-intentioned but ultimately inauthentic grasp of other advocates. Alexa finally brought a lived experience, which was the true mark of some much-needed legitimacy in the space. And if that meant braving the perilous, nearly apocalyptic downpour of Los Angeles rain, so be it. Because true dedication wasn't about strategy or impact. It was about one's willingness to endure the mild inconvenience of slightly damp clothing. Most advocates simply weren't cut out for such grueling conditions, lacking the necessary fortitude to withstand moisture without an umbrella. But Alexa, she was just built different. And if amplifying others required amplifying herself just a bit more in the process, well, that was just the price of progress. As 2023 came to a close, Alexa turned her focus inward, addressing conflicts within her own circle through Eat Predators. She launched Guess Who, an unflinchingly direct series exposing individuals she believed had jeopardized her movement. Alexa accused them of using her for clout and resources, presenting receipts that, in her view, proved their motives were driven by personal recognition and financial gain rather than advocacy. In a shocking twist, she alleged that many had ties to Dan Schneider, Milosh, or both, suggesting a deliberate effort to infiltrate and sabotage her movement from within. The series was as cathartic as it was controversial, offering supporters a rare behind-the-scenes look at the difficulties of sustaining a grassroots movement, especially when others sought to exploit her celebrity status. But this betrayal was only the beginning of another chapter in her fight for justice. Soon after, in February 2024, Investigation Discovery released a teaser for its highly anticipated docuseries, Quiet on Set: The Dark Side of Kids TV, a 5-part expose on Nickelodeon's unsafe working environment for child actors, with a major focus on Dan Schneider. Alexa's powerful line, quote, "I've been waiting 17 years for this," end quote, set the stage for a long overdue reckoning. While she did not play a leading role in the final cut, her early interviews were instrumental in securing funding, without which the series might have never come to fruition. She also noted that her decision to speak out had inspired others to do the same, a shift that she had long fought for. For those familiar with Nickelodeon scandals, much of Quiet on Set served as a recap, until its most explosive moment. Former child star Drake Bell, whom Alexa had previously condemned on Eat Predators, revealed for the first time that he had been a victim of convicted predator Brian Peck. Though Peck's crimes were public knowledge, the identity of his victim had been a long speculated mystery. Bell's revelation confirmed the devastating truth. The revelation reframed public perception of Bell, who had been scrutinized for his own past misconduct, and forced Alexa to reassess her stance. The docuseries catapulted Alexa back into the spotlight, leading to invitations for high-profile interviews on Just Trish, The Megyn Kelly Show, and Access Hollywood, to name a few. However, while quiet on set aligned with her mission, her actions in the aftermath left some supporters confused and disillusioned. The controversy escalated when she quietly deleted an Eat Predators episode, reacting to Bell's 2021 child endangerment sentencing. The decision, coupled with rumors of her attending a Bell concert, fueled speculation and disappointment. Alexa remained silent on the matter, withdrawing from the public eye between April and June. During her hiatus, cryptic social media posts hinted at harassment from a journalist and escalating threats from a stalker, allegedly endangering her, her husband, and their children. When Alexa returned in June, she broke her silence with an emotionally raw explanation. She revealed that she had been bullied and coerced into reevaluating her decision to delete the Bell episode. Alexa clarified that she had removed the video to allow space for Bell's survivor story to be heard without bias, emphasizing that, as a survivor herself, she understood the complex and often contradictory nature of these narratives. However, her reasoning ignited further backlash, with critics accusing her of hypocrisy. She admitted that confronting the roots of abuse in such a public and emotionally charged context had taken an immense toll on her. Seeing Belle as a victim for the first time, alongside the rest of the world, was a pivotal moment, one that forced her to acknowledge the cyclical nature of trauma. Alexa argued that this revelation should have been a turning point for society, urging people to recognize that harm often stems from unaddressed trauma. Facing growing scrutiny, Alexa defended her decision to delete the video, asserting that survivors should never have to justify their choices, especially to those profiting from their pain. She also addressed criticisms, comparing her actions to Christy Carlson Romano's decision to delete Alexa's episode of Vulnerable, firmly rejecting the comparison. Alexa argued that her actions were rooted in empathy and a nuanced understanding of survivor stories, whereas she viewed Carlson Romano's motives as opportunistic and profit-driven. Complicating matters further, Alexa pointed to an error in a New York Times article falsely labeling Bell as a registered sex offender. Though she had never referenced the article in her video, she later claimed this misinformation influenced her decision to remove the episode, stating that she did not want to perpetuate inaccuracies. Critics, however, viewed this as a weak justification rather than a genuine reason. In the months following her return, Alexa took another unannounced 2-month hiatus, during which speculation intensified. Then, shortly before her return in September, she posted photos of journalist Kat Tenbarge and YouTuber Adam McIntyre, accusing them of playing a role in driving her into silence. This was unexpected. McIntyre had been vocal about his own experience as a victim of YouTuber Colleen Ballinger, a case Alexa had previously supported. McIntyre responded with a video denying direct involvement and claiming he only intervened to defend Tenbarge, whom he described as a respected journalist and friend. However, in her comeback episode, Alexa revealed that Tenbarge was the journalist who had harassed her, someone Alexa had once admired for championing Amber Heard during the Depp versus Heard trial. Now, she accused Tenbarge of hypocrisy, alleging that the journalist abandoned those principles when it came to Alexa's own advocacy. According to Alexa, Tenbarge had sent her 18 invasive questions with less than 24 hours to respond, and when she refused, Tenbarge attempted to discredit her. Alexa claimed this led to a smear campaign that ultimately forced her to step back from Eat Predators. She further alleged that Tenbarge had amplified the voice of an alleged stalker, endangering Alexa's family. Alexa didn't mince words. She accused Tenbarge of collaborating with individuals connected to Schneider and Milosh, and labeled McIntyre complicit in the harassment. What angered her most was McIntyre allegedly calling her irrelevant, which she saw as emblematic of how survivors are often dismissed when they challenge the wrong people. Adding to the controversy, she claimed that Tenbarge had refused to investigate key court documents that, in her view, clarified Bell's legal history. She also provided screenshots showing she'd offered the publicly available files to Tenbarge, which Tenbarge later allegedly refused to review, stating that they made her uncomfortable. Instead of reporting the full picture, Alexa argued, Tenbarge shifted the narrative, portraying her as someone irresponsibly distributing sensitive information, which Alexa viewed as a betrayal of both journalistic integrity and a deliberate effort to undermine her credibility. In her September episode, Alexa tackled these accusations head on, asserting that Tenbarge's unpublished article was riddled with inaccuracies and maliciously defamatory claims. Retaliation, she believed, for her refusal to endorse Tenbarge's reporting on Drake Bell. Feeling abandoned by the very media figures who claimed to support survivors, Alexa vowed to take matters into her own hands. She announced her intention to release the court files herself, encouraging the public to examine the evidence firsthand. This marked a turning point in Alexa's battle to reclaim her voice. She saw it as proof that even those who claimed to fight for justice could perpetuate harm, and that survivors often had to advocate for themselves in a system designed to discredit them. By releasing the files, she sought not only to clear her name, but to expose what she believed was a fundamental failure in how society understands abuse, trauma, and accountability. As the dust settled, one thing became certain. Alexa Nikolas wasn't backing down. The scrutiny she faced was only just beginning, but neither was her performance. And so, we end here with the story Alexa wants you to believe. But this is only half the picture. Because in part 2, we're going to explore what happens when personal vendettas are dressed up as activism. When the platform isn't built on purpose, but on old grievances repackaged as justice. We'll look beyond the image, the tropes, the buzzwords, beneath the slogans, and into the patterns that unraveled it all. And by the end, you won't just know what happened to Eat Predators, you'll understand why it was destined to fall apart from the get-go. Then, you can decide for yourself what this was really about. Before we step into the other side of the story, I want you to pause for a moment and think back to your adolescence. Do you remember what life was like at 12 or 13? Maybe, like me, you were the new kid, struggling to carve out a place for yourself, only to face the same challenge all over again the very next year. Even if that wasn't your experience, can you recall a time when someone was unkind to you? Or a moment when, perhaps, you were unkind to someone else? Did you ever hope for an invitation to a party, only to realize you'd been left out? Do you remember the sting of exclusion, the weight of not belonging? Now, decades later, do you ever wonder about those people? Do they ever cross your mind? The classmates you spent endless school days with, those singular years that felt like an eternity back then, but in hindsight were merely a fleeting chapter in your life story. Did those experiences leave a mark? Maybe they shaped you in ways you never fully recognized, fortifying your resilience, thickening your skin. Or maybe they left scars you still carry, manifesting as social anxiety or a lingering sense of self-doubt. Now, here's a question to consider. Would you build a career around what those people did to you? Would you start a podcast to publicly air their wrongdoings, sharing their names and photos with the world? And if not, would your answer change if these were not classmates, but castmates? Not childhood friends, but colleagues? And one more thing, do you consider yourself a survivor of abuse because of what you endured back then? Hold on to that thought as we move forward, because when someone builds an entire movement out of their past, the real question isn't what happened to them. It's what are they doing with it now? Now let's pick up where we left off with Alexa. If Alexa's reaction to the seemingly harmless and routine questions felt exaggerated, it was because they carried a far deeper significance to her. They signaled that the voices she had worked so hard to suppress had found a medium to speak out again, and people were listening to what they had to say. Alexa recognized that answering these questions would reveal the glaring hypocrisy in her actions, a hypocrisy that seemingly served as the foundation of her platform. This realization was destabilizing because it exposed the fragility of a narrative she had carefully constructed, one so delicate that even a single crack could threaten to shatter it entirely. Her reaction, then, was less about the questions themselves and more about the existential threat they posed to her carefully curated image. The Drake Bell files that Alexa Nikolas publicly released were not just another point of inquiry for journalist Kat Tenbarge. They also contained explicit sensitive information regarding the crimes committed against Bell's minor victim. The documents were so sloppily redacted that deeply personal details about the victim and her legal pursuit of justice were fully exposed. By disseminating these documents, Alexa effectively doxed the minor victim, subjecting her to further trauma and public scrutiny. While no one argued that Alexa was responsible for the poor redactions, the irony lied in the scathing remarks towards Tenbarge when Alexa accused her of re-victimizing her when Tenbarge asked the 18 standard questions, while continually overlooking the undeniable harm she'd inflicted on Bell's victim. Alexa's decision to leak the files, to both undermine Tenbarge and clear her own name, was riddled with ethical failures, chief among them the disregard for the person most affected, Bell's victim. Under increasing scrutiny for deleting her video response to Bell's sentencing, the phony advocate forwarded the files to Tenbarge, hoping the journalist would run a story that not only salvaged her own reputation, but also vindicated Bell, retroactively justifying her decision to erase the video. But when Tenbarge voiced discomfort with the materials, it became clear to Alexa that the journalist would not serve as a vehicle to rehabilitate either her or Bell's public images. Tenbarge instantly recognized the files for what they were, not standard FOIA material, but confidential legal records, the kind never meant to see daylight. Alexa, blind to the ethical weight of what she held, mistook Tenbarge's unease for suspicion about their authenticity. But Tenbarge's concern ran deeper. She knew only legal teams had access to records this granular, and she knew those same teams were bound, at least in theory, by the same ethical codes that govern journalists. Yet she also understood how easily those codes could be bypassed. Send the files to someone reckless enough, desperate enough, or ignorant enough to leak them, and suddenly the stain was on someone else's hands. Alexa, oblivious or in denial, became the perfect pawn, distributing someone else's dirty work while failing to grasp the damage she was complicit in. Even if we're generous, assuming Alexa was too blind or too arrogant to recognize she was a pawn in a larger scheme, ignorance is no shield. Not for someone who parades as a self-appointed advocate soliciting public donations to, quote, support survivors, while failing to uphold the very principles she preaches. The same voice that loudly demands apologies and accountability from others has yet to offer even a whisper of remorse for the harm she unleashed. Over 6 months later, she remains willfully obtuse, either unable or unwilling to comprehend the lasting damage wrought by her reckless betrayal of trust. Despite repeated attempts by even her most loyal supporters to steer her toward understanding and later accountability, Alexa's anger and volatility only deepened her resolve. Instead of reflection, she lashed out, publicly offering step-by-step instructions on how to acquire the files through Ohio courts. Yet this defiance spectacularly backfired. Those who followed her directions received only the standard, heavily redacted FOIA records, a glaring contrast to the unredacted documents Alexa had irresponsibly leaked. In her attempt to vindicate herself, she instead confirmed the truth. These files were never meant for public eyes. Alexa appeared disturbingly unable or unwilling to comprehend why a journalist would reject such files procured outside ethical bounds, especially when their sole purpose was to sway coverage in favor of a defendant who had already pleaded guilty. Accepting them would mean rewriting reality, undermining a victim's suffering, discrediting a guilty plea, and shattering the fundamental ethics of responsible journalism. Yet Alexa's defiance only hardened. She brazenly argued that journalists like Tenbarge should exploit documents, even ones like these which were tainted, to construct a narrative absolving a guilty defendant, an argument as reckless as it was morally bankrupt. When Tenbarge asked the self-appointed advocate why she had deleted her reaction video to Bell's sentencing, Alexa cloaked her silence behind the veil of a survivor's prerogative. Yet even the most measured calls for transparency were met with accusations of harassment and coercion. Tenbarge pressed further, asking Alexa whether she still stood with Bell's minor victim, as she boldly and proudly proclaimed in her original video. In response, Alexa defaulted to her routine deflection, claiming she, quote, stood by the victim's bravery, end quote, while paradoxically venting frustration that the victim's statements, in her view, conflicted with the forensic findings from the Cleveland police investigation. This glaring contradiction exposed a deep hypocrisy. The same advocate who relentlessly preached that survivors must never be questioned was now openly scrutinizing a minor victim, one whose abuser had pleaded guilty, no less, while simultaneously insisting that her own narrative remained sacrosanct. Alexa's attempt to cloak this double standard in clever phrasing fell flat. Anyone capable of basic critical thinking could see through the rhetorical gymnastics. The bitter irony: the only person whose truth Alexa publicly doubted was the one whose perpetrator had faced justice. By dismissing the source of the documents as irrelevant, Alexa revealed where her priorities truly lay, fixated on undermining Bell's conviction while ignoring the legal reality of his guilt. Both she and a handful of Bell's supporters appear to be clinging to the notion that his guilty plea was somehow unjust, exposing a fundamental misunderstanding of how the U.S. justice system operates. Under the federal rules of criminal procedure, no court will accept a guilty plea without a clear factual basis to support it, a safeguard designed to prevent baseless convictions. While systemic flaws undeniably exist, often harming marginalized defendants, research from the Yale Law Journal and other reputable institutions consistently shows that these failures disproportionately affect those without privilege or resources, not individuals like Bell, who had the benefit of private legal counsel. The idea that Bell's guilty plea lacked factual merit is not only implausible, it's laughable. Anyone making such a claim is parroting the very narrative Bell's legal team deployed when they used Alexa as a pawn. And let's be clear, no rational person is denying that Bell was a victim himself in a separate context. That was a tragedy, full stop. But conflating Bell's trauma with the actions he pleaded guilty to in 2021 is intellectually bankrupt. His victim was, without question, a victim in that case, and Bell's own admission of guilt sealed that truth. While dodging any real explanation for why she deleted her reaction to Bell's 2021 sentencing, Alexa had no issue waxing poetic about Bell's disclosure of his own victimization on Quiet on Set, claiming it, quote, changed her, end quote, and, quote, should have changed us all, end quote. But this was not genuine reflection. It was performative moralizing. In her rush to position her personal epiphany as some universal awakening, Alexa trampled over the deeply personal and nonlinear reality of trauma processing. By framing her emotional pivot as an absolute truth, she effectively invalidated those who had already reckoned with the complexities of abuse cycles, dismissing them as if they simply hadn't been enlightened enough to see things her way. While survivors, or anyone, are under no obligation to disclose personal matters they'd rather keep private, the rules shift dramatically when one assumes the mantle of a public advocate, especially as the leader of a collective. In that rule, Alexa does not get to hide behind selective privacy. She owes her supporters transparency, particularly after making the unethical decision to publicly share another person's private trauma without their consent. Her refusal to acknowledge this, dismissing criticism as harassment, exposes a fundamental misunderstanding or willful disregard of what genuine advocacy demands: consent, accountability, and a commitment to protect the vulnerable, not exploit them. The hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore when viewed alongside Alexa's own public campaign against Christy Carlson Romano for hosting a victim-turned-predator on her Vulnerable podcast. Alexa pressured Carlson Romano to pull the episode, then demanded an explanation when her own interview was also removed, conveniently omitting that she had been disparaging Carlson Romano and her company in the public sphere. But the distinction was always clear. Carlson Romano never claimed the title of advocate and was never beholden to the ethical standards Alexa so freely weaponized. Alexa, on the other hand, voluntarily adopted the role of an advocate, profiting off of a community's trust while failing to uphold the very values she demanded from others. And this is the rot at the core of influencer-led advocacy. When individuals treat advocacy as a personal brand, more concerned with image management than the principles of care and integrity, they dilute the credibility of the entire movement. Alexa's actions don't just represent a personal betrayal, they feed into a wider systemic failure where visibility and self-interest are mistaken for leadership. In the end, survivors are left disillusioned, forced to wade through another betrayal from someone who once claimed to stand with them, only to realize that, like so many others, Alexa was standing for herself all along. The disconnect deepened when Tenbarge posed a simple yet crucial question. Did Alexa have any formal qualifications or training in advocacy or trauma response? Rather than engaging in good faith, Alexa bristled, framing the inquiry as a personal attack on her competence. With thinly veiled indignation, she dismissed the very premise, deriding professional training as, quote, just school, end quote. This defensive posture didn't just signal a lack of accountability for past harms. It exposed a deeper unwillingness to engage in the kind of education necessary to better serve the very communities she claims to champion. The irony was glaring. If training was truly as trivial to her as she claimed, why react with such hostility? The answer was clear. Alexa wasn't rejecting the value of training. She was rejecting what it represented. The idea that advocacy requires humility, expertise, and the capacity to grow. A legitimate advocate, or anyone acting in good faith, would have seen Tenbarge's question for what it was: a standard, reasonable inquiry. In any professional or advocacy space, questions about training, qualifications, and preparedness are routine, especially when lives and well-being are at stake. No rational person would take offense to such a harmless line of questioning, unless they were determined to interpret it through a lens of insecurity or deflection. For someone secure in their credentials, or even someone humbly aware of their limits, the question would have been met with transparency or a willingness to reflect. But Alexa's defensive outrage revealed far more than she likely intended. A phony, especially one who has been operating without the appropriate expertise, recognizes that this type of question shines an unwelcome light on the shaky foundation beneath their claims. In Alexa's case, the hostility was a tell. By ridiculing the concept of formal training as, quote, just school, end quote, she sought to diminish the value of skills she herself lacked, while attempting to reframe a valid question as an unfair personal attack. The truth is simple. Only someone who feels threatened by what the answer would expose, a lack of preparedness, a pattern of poor judgment, or a career built on posturing, would react with such volatility. The question wasn't the problem. The insecurity it surfaced was. Let's consider a simple analogy. Imagine you've been painting for years. Friends and family admire your talent and urge you to showcase your work in a gallery. When a journalist asks if you've had formal training or prior experience selling art, Would you interpret that as an accusation that you have no skill? Or would you see it as an invitation to share your journey and the evolution of your craft? While formal education certainly bolsters credibility, lacking it does not invalidate your work, unless you choose to treat the question as an insult. Alexa's reaction to Tenbarge's basic question about advocacy training revealed more than defensiveness. It exposed a deep insecurity she refused to confront. Rather than responding with transparency or humility, Alexa deflected, demanding to know whether Tenbarge had trauma response training, conveniently ignoring the vast difference between journalism and leading an advocacy collective. Journalists are tasked with adhering to ethical reporting standards. Advocacy leaders, however, shoulder a very different burden: the responsibility to navigate the delicate, highly individualized needs of survivors, a skill set that typically requires specialized training and education. What made Alexa's responses even more egregious was how she twisted this interaction into a public spectacle. She launched into a Twitter tirade, posting 4 separate rants in one day about how corporations now supposedly expect victims to obtain certifications in order to speak about their own trauma. At the time, even her supporters were left confused, but when she later disclosed that these tweets stemmed from her behind-the-scenes interactions with Tenbarge, it became clear this was little more than an emotional outburst aimed at deflecting from legitimate scrutiny. It was a deeply disingenuous move, misrepresenting a fair and reasonable question about her preparedness, as if NBC were requiring survivors to present certifications in order to tell their stories. Worse still, it revealed how Alexa was willing to weaponize her status as a survivor to shut down basic accountability. Laying on survivor guilt like a smokescreen, Alexa insisted that enduring trauma alone qualified her to advocate for others. Not only is that perspective fundamentally at odds with genuine advocacy, it's a deeply cynical distortion of what survivor-centered leadership requires. Surviving trauma does not by default make someone an advocate, just as surviving an illness doesn't make someone a doctor, or building IKEA furniture doesn't make someone a master carpenter. Personal experience offers perspective, but it is not a substitute for the training and skill development necessary to responsibly guide others through complex and often volatile circumstances. Mr. Beast doesn't automatically become an economist because he gives away large sums of money. Alexa's refusal to acknowledge this simple distinction shows a staggering lack of humility and an unwillingness to grow. Unfortunately, this pattern of reframing benign, even logistical observations as personal attacks runs deep. When Adam McIntyre, aware of NBC's decision not to move forward with Tenbarge's article on Alexa and Eat Predators, mentioned that the outlet found Alexa was not well known enough to justify the time and resources, Alexa distorted the statement beyond recognition. She falsely claimed McIntyre had called her irrelevant, framing it as victim-blaming and an assault on her worth as a survivor. In reality, McIntyre's comment was nothing more than a logistical explanation. But Alexa's selective misinterpretation, converting neutral statements into manufactured offenses, revealed a troubling pattern. This wasn't just defensiveness, it was a deliberate strategy of manipulating language to shield herself from any form of critique, no matter how reasonable. This behavior underscores a broader pattern of bad faith engagement, an opportunistic exploitation of survivor status as a shield, while routinely dismissing the very principles of accountability, honesty, and transparency she claims to champion. And this isn't just about Alexa's personal defensiveness. It's about the corrosive impact such behavior has on advocacy spaces at large. When someone in a leadership position consistently manipulates survivor status to deflect criticism and reframe accountability as victimization, they erode the trust essential to any survivor-centered movement. Advocacy relies on mutual respect, transparency, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Alexa's pattern of bad faith engagement weaponizes vulnerability, turning legitimate conversations about ethics and qualifications into perceived personal attacks. The damage doesn't stop with Alexa. When influencers treat advocacy like a personal brand rather than a collective responsibility, they create ripple effects that harm the very communities they claim to represent. Survivors who witness these tactics are left feeling disillusioned and unsafe, particularly when they see accountability dismissed as harassment and structural critiques spun into personal vendettas. This creates a chilling effect where genuine concerns about ethics, leadership, or harmful practices within advocacy spaces are silenced out of fear of being labeled abusive or unsupportive. Even more concerning is how this behavior fuels public skepticism toward advocacy work as a whole. When figures like Alexa distort accountability into an act of bullying, it plays directly into the hands of bad faith critics who already distrust advocacy spaces. It validates narratives that paint survivor communities as chaotic, leaderless, or hypocritical, narratives that harm survivors far beyond Alexa's immediate circle. True advocacy demands humility, continuous self-education, and a commitment to centering others, not oneself. It requires leaders to be accountable not just for their public messaging, but for their impact their actions have behind closed doors. Alexa's repeated refusal to meet this basic standard doesn't just expose her shortcomings, it undermines the credibility of the entire movement she claims to support. And the survivors caught in the fallout, they're left to rebuild trust again. Back to Tenbarge's question, true to form, Alexa deflected once again, attempting to turn the focus back onto the journalist by claiming that she'd sent her evidence that her sources were effing liars. She further alleged that the article was never published because it was defamatory and maliciously targeted her. Yet this accusation exposed a glaring flaw that made Alexa look not only uninformed, but absurdly incapable of basic reasoning. Legally speaking, defamation hinges on publication. Without a statement being communicated to a third party, there is no defamation, period. An unpublished article, no matter how critical in draft form, cannot meet the threshold for defamation because it never reached an audience. No publication, no reputational damage. Alexa's argument collapsed under the weight of this elementary legal principle, leaving her scrambling to cast herself as the victim of a phantom offense. And if she could so easily misinterpret something as black and white as defamation law, what else had she twisted to suit her narrative? The answer, as it turned out, was plenty, beginning with the very origin of Eat Predators. The same sources, Alexa labeled as effing liars, were quietly helping Tenbarge piece together a much broader story, something Alexa had likely realized based on the pattern of questions Tenbarge sent her. It's the only plausible reason why Alexa responded to otherwise mundane, routine questions with such irrational hostility and paranoia. Despite Alexa's public claims that she single-handedly founded the movement, the truth told by multiple sources was different. Each of them had been represented by the same attorney in their respective cases against predators in the entertainment industry. That attorney, Joe Dunn, who has since been disbarred, may now be a footnote in this narrative, but at the time he played a pivotal role. Dunn had urged his clients, including Alexa, to band together, seeing the power in uniting their voices under a collective. Alexa's pre-existing celebrity status made her the most visible face, but the creation of the group was never a sole endeavor. What Alexa framed as a personal crusade was, in reality, a collaborative effort she later distorted into a self-serving myth. When Tenbarge pressed Alexa for clarity, Alexa escalated her deflection by weaponizing both her survivor status and her identity as a woman. She framed the inquiry as a misogynist attack on her independence, accusing Tenbarge, a feminist journalist, of undermining her ability to build something on her own. It was a calculated pivot, steering the conversation away from legitimate questions and toward an emotionally charged narrative designed to rally sympathy and obscure the inconsistencies in her story. Yet to any discerning observer, Tenbarge's questions were not an assault on Alexa's capabilities. They were an attempt to piece together how Eat Predators actually took shape, and how Alexa's celebrity status amplified the collective's early momentum. While Alexa undeniably leveraged her existing social media clout, and she'd have been foolish not to, she deflected scrutiny by reframing valid criticism as gendered oppression, shifting focus away from the real concern, her credibility. From the beginning, Alexa marketed Eat Predators as a collective, championing its grassroots spirit. When her leadership was challenged, she abruptly revised the narrative, positioning herself as the sole architect of the movement. This pivot exposed her deeper motive: to co-opt the image of collaboration while centralizing control and monopolizing credit. What emerged wasn't a defense of her independence, but an effort to delegitimize her former collaborators. Over time, she'd publicly vilified them, calling them toxic and effing liars. In a chaotic attempt to rewrite the movement's history, Alexa flooded Eat Predators' platform with 8+ hours of so-called receipts intended to prove sole ownership. Ironically, the evidence only reinforced what no one disputed, that she had created the name. What it did inadvertently highlight was Alexa's deeper responsibility, not for the success of Eat Predators, but for its implosion. The unraveling revealed a more unsettling pattern. By systematically discrediting her fellow survivors, the very people who had volunteered their time, labor, and emotional energy, Alexa insulated herself from sharing power, recognition, or financial resources. In doing so, she mirrored the very abuses of power her advocacy claimed to challenge. As Tenbarge's investigation progressed, the pattern became clear. Alexa wasn't simply a flawed leader, but someone willing to distort history to preserve her image, even at the expense of the advocacy community's trust. The evidence she provided Tenbarge was the same material she weaponized in her Guess Who YouTube series, and later on Survivors Divided on Instagram, painting former collaborators as antagonists while omitting their contributions. This revisionism served a dual purpose. It justified their erasure and freed Alexa from having to share credit or influence. Yet the contradiction remained glaring. In early press, including a 2022 Los Angeles Magazine article, Alexa herself credited these individuals as foundational. Later, when they chose to remain private, she exposed them anyway, doxing fellow survivors to an audience she knew could be hostile. Without platforms of their own, these individuals could not defend themselves. Their silence wasn't an admission of guilt. It was a necessity, a response to the asymmetry of power Alexa had carefully constructed. At the opening of Guess Who, Alexa complained that she'd rather be, quote, eating predators than defending Eat Predators, end quote, framing herself as the victim of a smear campaign, supposedly orchestrated by other survivors. Yet in reality, she was the one deploying her platform to publicly discredit and humiliate fellow survivors. Instead of addressing the broader advocacy goals of dismantling systemic abuse, she waged a personal war to rewrite the narrative in her favor. Others noticed too, including Tenbarge, who directly asked Alexa how weaponizing her influence and platform against her former collaborators aligned with Eat Predators' mission of advocating for survivors and dismantling power imbalances. She followed up by questioning why Alexa's moderators, primarily her mother Alexandra and husband Mika, were silencing dissent and deleting comments that highlighted Alexa's wrongdoings towards these co-founders. Whether Alexa overlooked or intentionally ignored the consequences of her actions, the result was the same. Her former collaborators were subjected to public condemnation without the means or a platform to defend themselves. In consolidating her control over Eat predators, silencing dissent, and erasing the contributions of those who had helped build the collective, Alexa ironically mirrored the very exploitation and control she claimed to oppose. Instead of remaining an advocacy movement, Eat predators devolved into a battleground for personal vendettas and petty grievances, diverting its focus away from supporting survivors and dismantling systemic abuse. Another perplexing thread in Alexa's Guess Who series was her attempt to connect her former collaborators to figures from her distant past, most notably Dan Schneider and at times her ex-husband Milos. What followed was less an expose and more a conspiracy-laden narrative that read like a crazy Lifetime Channel movie script. In Alexa's telling, Schneider, a television producer she briefly worked with as a child nearly 2 decades ago, had been quietly orchestrating an elaborate infiltration of Eat predators. The goal? To sabotage her advocacy movement before she could achieve what she believed was her inevitable rise, amassing a modest social media following and making a cameo in a docuseries about systemic abuse. According to Alexa, this alleged master plan involved Schneider recruiting and embedding operatives into her life over the course of 18 years, a claim so far-fetched that it verges on self-parody. The notion that a disgraced Nickelodeon executive would invest nearly 2 decades plotting revenge against a former child actor turned small-scale advocate is not only wildly implausible, but strains even the most generous suspension of disbelief. Even if one were to entertain such a premise, the sheer logistics alone would be laughable. This was just one thread in the broader tapestry of Alexa's pattern of self-sabotage. In her Guess Who series, she cast her former colleagues and co-founders as greedy, self-serving capitalists eager to monetize a movement meant to uplift survivors, while elevating herself as a righteous, incorruptible savior. Her so-called evidence? A collection of text message screenshots she proudly framed as damning receipts. Yet, on closer inspection, those messages revealed the opposite. Far from plotting to exploit survivors, Alexa's co-founders were engaged in transparent, thoughtful conversations about the challenges of scaling a grassroots initiative while maintaining ethical responsibility. They raised valid concerns about sustainability and the integrity of their advocacy. In contrast, Alexa's own words raised far more serious alarms, most notably her disturbing suggestion to deprioritize or outright ignore survivor inquiries if her colleagues did not have the time to assist. This wasn't a minor logistical misstep. It exposed a reckless misunderstanding of trauma-informed advocacy. The American Psychological Association stresses that a survivor's first disclosure can determine whether they seek further help or retreat into silence, making mishandling these moments potentially devastating. Alexa's behavior revealed a deeper fallacy. She acted as though surviving personal trauma inherently qualified her as an advocate, dismissing the essential role of formal training, empathy, and professional skills. Many who backed her narrative likely did so because they too lacked the specialized knowledge to recognize the gravity of her missteps. Perhaps most revealing is how Alexa recycled these very screenshots. Just months after showcasing them in Guess Who, she provided the same screenshots to journalist Kat Tenbarge in April 2024 as part of her response to the 18 questions. The intent? To discredit her former co-founders and expose Tenbarge's alleged sources. Yet, in a September video, aptly titled The Truth About Kat Tenbarge, Alexa accused the feminist journalist of unethical, victim-blaming reporting for supposedly omitting these crucial messages. A puzzling accusation, given that Tenbarge never even published a story on the subject. More troubling still, Alexa appeared to expect a major media outlet journalist to abandon basic professional standards by accepting uncorroborated screenshots as irrefutable evidence. The Associated Press news values and principles are clear. Quote, "We do not knowingly introduce false information into material intended for publication. We do not rely on unverified documents, images, or social media content." End quote. Likewise, the Society of Professional Journalists, Reuters Handbook of Journalism, and even the BBC editorial guidelines all echo the same principle. Uncorroborated screenshots are not evidence, particularly given how easily they can be manipulated. Ethical journalism demands independent verification, and even if Tinbarge had found Alexa's screenshots credible, it would have been illogical to prioritize a single version of events over multiple consistent accounts from other sources. At best, Alexa's screenshots confirmed trivialities, such as her coining the name Eat Predators, something no one seemed to have contested, or her colleagues occasionally arriving late to protests. More damning for Alexa, however, was that the screenshots unintentionally highlighted her co-founders' ethical intentions, their valid frustrations over her impulsive actions, like launching a book club without consultation, and their clear commitment to responsible, survivor-centered advocacy. Alexa's contradictions did not stop there. Her anti-capitalist posturing unraveled when placed beside the reality of Eat Predators. Rather than directing survivors to meaningful resources, her website funnels them directly to a merch shop, offering $75 sweatshirts and $40 tote bags emblazoned with an Eat Predators logo, which, by the way, is eerily reminiscent of the iconic Eat the Rich design, something which Alexa admitted her husband threw together in under 5 minutes. To be clear, using merchandise to support a cause isn't unethical, but decrying others for alleged profit motives while actively commercializing your own advocacy is undeniably hypocritical. This hypocrisy only deepened when Alexa rolled out tiered subscription models on both YouTube and Patreon, charging supporters anywhere from $3 to $45 per month for exclusive anti-capitalist content, all while continuing to accuse her former colleagues of greed. The dissonance between Alexa's rhetoric and reality was not just glaring, it was fundamentally deceptive. Which begs the question, who truly embodied the principles of survivor advocacy? Alexa, who marketed herself as a self-sacrificing martyr while profiting from the movement, or her co-founders, who consistently prioritized responsible, informed support? To fully grasp Alexa's duplicity, one must look no further than these overtly capitalistic subscription tiers masquerading as activism. $55 a month, you could become an Eat Predators patron, gaining access to the membership videos and the dinner party videos, though neither is explained, leaving one to wonder how often they were posted or what they entailed. For $11.11 a month, you graduated to an Eat Predators demonstrator, which included a generous 10% discount code for merchandise and access to a predator-free playlist. Presumably, this was a playlist featuring artists and labels free of predatory allegations, though this too lacked any clarification. For $22.22 a month, you received all the previous benefits plus access to a mysterious Eat Predators zine with a special thanks. Details on the zine's publication schedule or what the special thanks meant is nowhere to be found. At $33.33 a month, the Art of Protest tier grants you access to the protest sign archive as well as your own protest sign, though whether this was a physical sign or just a PDF file remains unclear. Finally, for $44.44 a month, you could be an Eat Predators Predator Eater, which offered absolutely nothing new. No bonus perks, just an extra $11 a month for the privilege of being labeled as a predator eater. YouTube memberships aren't much different, though they were more modestly priced. The $2.99 per month Munchies tier gives you loyalty badges, custom emojis for chats, and the ability to attach a single paid message during a live stream, the only reliable way to get a response from Alexa. For $4.99, the dinner party tier offered the same emojis, badges, and merch discount as Patreon's $11 a month tier, but excluded the Predator-free playlist. Finally, for $9.99 per month, the Chef's Kiss tier added the bi-weekly book club streams. Theoretically, in reality, the playlist only includes 7 total videos spanning an 11-week period from October 2023 to January 2024 and covered 2 books, Hard Feelings by Jeanette McCurdy and The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. But yes, Alexa was charging $10 a month, the highest tier, for access to the book club. The same book club she accused her co-founders of wanting to monetize and supposedly didn't want to charge people a dime for it. Yet well over a year after her co-founders had stopped involvement with Eat Predators, and this charitable do-gooder was graciously offering access to the book club at only the highest tier. What made Alexa's paid memberships particularly ironic was her ongoing accusations that Christy Carlson Romano profited from others' trauma, an allegation that surfaced only after Carlson Romano refused Alexa's demand to remove the Vulnerable episode featuring Corey Feldman. Yet, when Alexa herself was the guest, she raised no objections to Carlson Romano monetizing their conversation. And when Alexa hosts Eat Predators, she has no qualms about profiting from trauma while marketing the platform as a grassroots advocacy collective rather than an entertainment podcast. The difference couldn't be clearer. Carlson Romano treated Vulnerable as a media project, never misrepresenting it as activism. Alexa, on the other hand, built her platform on the illusion of selfless advocacy while operating it as a business. Her entitlement only escalated from there. Not only did Alexa demand that Carlson Romano remove the Feldman episode, as if she alone dictates who a podcast host is allowed to interview, but she also insisted later that a portion of the episode's proceeds be donated to PAVE, a survivor support organization. This was positioned as reparations for featuring a guest who, though he was a survivor himself, had only ever been accused but never convicted of predatory behavior. Yet, when Alexa quietly deleted her own episode reacting to a survivor who had pleaded guilty to being a predator, she provided no explanation to her audience. If Alexa felt entitled to answers from Carlson Romano, why did she not hold herself to the same standard? Alexa's sudden insistence that podcast proceeds be donated to a nonprofit was conspicuously absent from her narrative, until the Feldman episode. It's curious how this newfound altruism emerged only after things unraveled, conveniently allowing her to reframe the situation and cast herself as the noble victim. She deleted my trauma after I simply asked her to donate the proceeds to a survivor organization. I'm paraphrasing, of course. Her actual words included more dramatic pauses, lip trembles, strategically timed gulps, and a sprinkling of dry tears. Despite branding herself as an advocate, Alexa has shown little evidence of supporting any advocacy group beyond her own for-profit endeavor. This wasn't advocacy. It was a calculated PR maneuver, a virtue-wrapped ultimatum. Ironically, if the roles were reversed, Alexa would almost certainly have called it what it was: coercive manipulation. Her narrative did not stop shifting there. After her episode was pulled, Alexa retroactively framed her experience on Vulnerable as an emotionally draining ordeal. While it's true that revisiting trauma can be taxing, reframing what was, by all accounts, a lighthearted conversation filled with laughter as a harrowing experience was disingenuous at best, manipulative at worst. And speaking of Carlson Romano, if she was familiar with Alexa's story, as she claimed on Vulnerable, why did she appear visibly stunned when Alexa claimed she was abused by Dan Schneider in a back room? The answer is clear. It wasn't new information, but a new framing. Carlson Romano, like most reasonable people, didn't equate a stern reprimand from producers and executives with abuse. Was it inappropriate and deeply concerning to send a 13-year-old into a high-pressure meeting without legal or parental support? Absolutely. Was it abuse? only if one is willing to stretch the definition beyond recognition. The only reason to frame the incident this way was to sensationalize it, to evoke outrage and cultivate sympathy. This manipulation does more than just mislead. It actively harms legitimate survivor advocacy by diluting the gravity of what abuse actually is. Alexa's penchant for dramatization isn't just unpalatable, it's exploitative. Her pattern of twisting reality to manufacture victimhood appears less about elevating survivors and more about maintaining her own relevance within survivor spaces. One of Alexa's most unsettling tendencies is her constant positioning of her experiences as somehow uniquely worse than everyone else's. While it's understandable to speak from personal perspective, especially on one's own platform, Alexa consistently ensured that no one's trauma narrative could ever eclipse her own. For instance, she argued that while most children might endure bullying, she alone was uniquely trapped because her acting career forced her to remain on set. But this logic collapses under scrutiny. Most children, whether due to family circumstances, financial hardship, or systemic issues, also cannot simply switch schools to escape bullies. By portraying herself as singularly afflicted, Alexa alienated those who might otherwise relate to her, and, worse, subtly minimized the validity of their own struggles. This tone-deaf tendency was even more glaring when juxtaposed with the experiences of other child actors, like Angelique Bates, who recounted on Quiet on Set the racism she faced on Nickelodeon's Take That, as well as her castmates ignoring the parental abuse happening in plain sight. Alexa's attempts to draw parallels between her own challenges and Bates's account of systemic racism and familial violence felt at best out of touch. At worst, it came across as dismissive and self-serving. Advocacy requires the ability to listen and honor stories that do not center oneself. Alexa's inability or unwillingness to do this weakened not only her credibility, but her capacity to function as a genuine ally in advocacy spaces. It's no surprise that Alexa's world, both professionally and personally, appeared to be shrinking. Many likely encouraged her to move on from decades-old grievances or to approach criticism with balance. But doing so must have felt dangerous, especially to those closest to her. After all, anyone observing how intensely she fixated on perceived slights from decades past would naturally fear becoming her next target. Among the few who remained, her husband and her mother, it's difficult to tell whether their loyalty was rooted in genuine connection or fear. Their reluctance to challenge Alexa's version of events spoke volumes. After all, if she could devote this much energy to publicly rehashing and dissecting the actions of a childhood castmate, how much more energy might she dedicate to scrutinizing those standing next to her today? Before diving into Tenbarge's other key questions, it would feel disingenuous to skip over the remainder. To avoid any impression that the most uncomfortable questions are being deliberately glossed over, it's only fair to lay the rest of them out now. First, Alexa mentioned in a February 2023 Rolling Stone article that she intended to refile her grooming case against her ex-husband Milos. The natural follow-up question from Tenbarge: was the case ever refiled? Alexa's eloquent response, quote, "None of your effing business." Other questions included: did YouTube moderators on Eat Predators delete comments disputing claims about former members? How were Eat Predators Patreon funds used prior to the group registering as a for-profit entity? How were the funds used after that transition? Did all subscribers actually receive the free merchandise promised at their respective subscription tiers? Did Alexa offer to pay a Discord moderator California's minimum wage? And if so, how does Eat Predators track work hours for moderators? And then there were the more serious matters. How does Alexa respond to a civil harassment restraining order filed against her on April 10, 2024? How does she respond to claims based on that April 10th filing and corroboration from 4 sources that she obtained a restraining order against a former Eat Predators member under false or incomplete pretenses? While I won't dig too deeply into the restraining order situation here, it's worth noting that Alexa featured the alleged stalker at the center of this situation in her Guess Who series. Based on available information, what began as a seemingly jovial friendship and working relationship appears to have unraveled when this person felt alienated by Alexa. Let's be clear. Having a stalker is serious and terrifying, and anyone in that situation deserves safety and empathy, and I hope she's found both. But that's where it gets complicated, because Alexa has consistently demonstrated a pattern of dramatizing circumstances to serve her narrative. So while I'd never outright dismiss anyone's experiences with a stalker, it's also hard to ignore Alexa's pattern of exaggeration that makes others, including me, approach her claims with caution. It's the same wariness Alexa herself boasts about her mother having taught her, quote, "Too many coincidences equals a plan," end quote. The irony is really hard to miss. Alexa's story is filled with way too many coincidences to simply take her word at face value now. This isn't about withholding empathy. It's about recognizing that credibility is non-negotiable in advocacy. When someone consistently reshapes narratives to serve their own interests, skepticism isn't cruel, it's necessary. In spaces built on trust, inconsistencies are not minor, they're disqualifying. Alexa continued to weaponize this pattern in her September episode, ironically titled "The Truth About Cat Tenbarge," where she claimed Tenbarge was legally and personally advising her stalker, supposedly out of revenge because Alexa refused to read an article Tenbarge wrote about Drake Bell. An article she admitted she never actually read, yet still deemed it to be, quote, "hypocritical," end quote. She took it a step further, speaking directly to Tenbarge in the episode, warning that she'd, quote, "better hope nothing bad happens," end quote, to her or her daughter as a result of allegedly enabling this stalker. It was not only grotesque, it was completely unfounded, another wild-eyed conspiracy theory with zero credibility. You truly can't make this up. Alexa's behavior isn't isolated but indicative of a broader trend permeating influencer-driven advocacy circles. Increasingly, prominence comes less from community building or collective care and more from carefully curated personal brands, transforming activism into a platform for clout and image management rather than meaningful systemic change. This creates a toxic loop. Visibility becomes confused with credibility, accountability is reframed as disloyalty, and legitimate critiques are dismissed as harassment. Alexa exemplifies this troubling commodification of advocacy, her actions revealing a stark disconnect between authentic leadership and opportunistic self-promotion. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes, provided one learns from them, but consistently repeating the same errors signals a deeper issue. Alexa's pattern of labeling everyday conflicts as abuse or bullying trivializes genuine survivor experiences. If exclusion from lunch tables or parties is Alexa's definition of abuse, then by her standard, most people could claim victimhood, which profoundly diminishes the validity of genuine survivors who endure nightmares unimaginable to most. Painful memories, however stinging, aren't automatically abusive. No one owes anyone friendship or inclusion. Choosing kindness and inclusivity is commendable, but weaponizing personal slights into narratives of bullying or abuse is neither noble nor genuine advocacy. Ironically, Jamie Lynn Spears captured it best when reflecting on Alexa's claims in her memoir, noting, quote, "Looking back, I think these experiences were normal childhood challenges," end quote. Real advocates understand the gravity of trauma and never exploit victimhood for clout or sympathy. They don't dismiss valid criticism as hate, rebrand ridicule as bullying, or attribute their wrongdoings to bots. Alexa's repeated deflection and distortion of her personal experiences into evidence of persecution raised troubling questions. In Alexa and her mother's frequent words again, quote, "Too many coincidences equals a plan," end quote. Indeed, the overwhelming contradictions and recurring patterns in Alexa's story represent precisely the kind of wariness she warns others about. The damage of Alexa's actions is tangible and serious. Survivors, already navigating trauma, are left to pick up the pieces of fractured trust, wondering whether those in leadership prioritize justice or personal ambition built on borrowed pain. True advocacy demands humility, accountability, and self-reflection, qualities Alexa consistently resists. Her relentless willingness to manipulate narratives, indifferent to the damage inflicted on others, reveals a disturbing disregard for anyone who doesn't immediately validate her claims. Alexa weaponizes her identity as a former child actor, abuse survivor, mother, and victim to deflect valid criticism, demonstrating a profound insecurity in her own truth. Most troublingly, she seems comfortable exploiting her children's status, publicly sharing images of her children despite claiming fears of stalking. If genuine danger existed, protecting your children's privacy would have been paramount. Yet her continued use of her children's images suggests these fears were manufactured primarily for sympathy. This pattern invites scrutiny into other claims she's shielded as untouchable topics. Undermining genuine survivor stories often fails survivors, that not every truth is provable, and that credibility can be the only currency someone has when telling their story. But that creates a complicated dynamic. Because, if you're like me, you also try to uphold the principle of innocent until proven guilty. And what happens when those two values, believing survivors and reserving judgment, collide? In many cases, we're left weighing one person's word against another's. And more often than not, we instinctively grant the person claiming harm the benefit of the doubt. That's why cases like Amber Heard's sparked so much backlash, because when the public realized there was more to the story that had been left out, the issue shifted from what she had endured to whether she was telling the full truth. Had Heard disclosed that she too had inflicted harm, she may never have lost the credibility she once had. But again, it all comes down to that, credibility. So is it fair to doubt someone whose credibility is already fractured? Probably not. But does it make you want to find the truth even more, just in case their credibility doesn't change the reality of what happened? Absolutely. That's why, despite Alexa's long history of contradictions and self-serving theatrics, I approached Groomed by the Groom, ready to believe her allegations. Because the idea of someone fabricating abuse out of spite or strategy is too disturbing to comprehend. But disturbing doesn't mean impossible. Ultimately, questioning isn't an act of cruelty, it's an act of responsibility. Critical thinking ensures that we uphold justice, not just for alleged victims, but for everyone involved. You should not feel guilty for seeking the truth, especially in a society that increasingly pressures people to accept narratives uncritically. Questioning does not mean you lack empathy. It means you value truth over comfortable illusions. It also means you acknowledge that some people lie, whether out of malice, jealousy, desperation, or delusion. Not everyone has good intentions. Not everyone is harmless. Many of Alexa's claims in Groomed by the Groom are unverifiable. Some can be fact-checked. Most were not. And let's be honest, no one wants to be the person who doubts a survivor, or even worse, appears to defend an alleged abuser. But silence isn't neutrality, and avoiding scrutiny isn't protection. It's how misinformation spreads and how movements get undermined from the inside out. Never in a million years did I expect to start this project and walk away doubting anything Alexa has said, but here I am. And given that no one else has been willing to fact-check her allegations against Milos, I found it necessary to do so myself. Not to be cruel, not to discredit, but to understand whether these accusations hold weight, or whether they're simply the latest installment in a long line of weaponized narratives. In addition to the theatrics, the affected tone, and the overall phoniness, what's really turned people off is Alexa's chronic habit of planting flags on hills she never climbed. And when you do that repeatedly, the audience starts to smell the performance. It's not about a single moment, it's the pattern. Watching her declare power to survivors, or survivors united will never be divided, feels like watching someone slap their name on a store-bought cake and proudly pretend they baked it from scratch. Sure, you can change the frosting color or sprinkle on new decorations, but that does not make you a baker. That makes you a decorator, and decorators don't get Michelin stars. Alexa has also perfected the art of demanding apologies she has no business accepting while refusing to offer a single one herself. The irony is painful. Had she taken accountability even once, I believe her audience would have been incredibly generous and forgiving. Survivors are not demanding perfection, they're demanding accountability. And in advocacy, that's not just reasonable, but foundational. When she began her now infamous September video about Kat, she launched into nearly 2 hours of self-important rambling, punctuated by a particularly telling line, quote, "I stood out in the rain for survivors, and it still wasn't enough for them," end quote. Let's be clear, survivors don't need anyone to stand in the rain for them. They've done that. They can stand in it, buy a poncho, or weather the storm on their own. What they need from an advocate is not melodrama, not grandstanding, not someone who expects praise for actions that require no bravery and merely some minor discomfort, but meaningful action, like using their platform to amplify accountability, not just for abusers, but for everyone, including themselves. They also need advocates who respect trauma-informed practices, not to dismiss them as just a quiz or just school. If it's so easy, then it should be easy enough to do. They need advocates who can listen without hijacking every story and making it about themselves, who can hold space, not the spotlight. One of the most grating things about Eat Predators is Alexa's seemingly total allergy to appreciation. During one of her post-Christmas streams, yet another derailed monologue about how Dan Schneider's best friend is allegedly following her stalker, she received a generous super chat. The supporter mentioned Alexa's Christmas and shared something about their own, presumably hoping for some basic acknowledgement. Instead, Alexa responded with a sullen, "My Christmas was a little bit triggering because I was finding out that Dan Schneider's best friend followed my stalker," etc., etc. It's not that hard. Just say, "Thank you, I'm glad your Christmas went well, and I appreciate the support." Instead, she squandered even a simple moment of connection by, surprise, making it about herself. Again. Someone is literally handing you money and a kind word, and rather than extend the most basic courtesy, you reflexively center yourself and ignore theirs entirely. And that, in a nutshell, is the problem. When advocacy becomes performance, when every gesture is just a backdrop for ego, people notice, and then they walk away. But for those who haven't walked away yet, there's something else that demands scrutiny: the money. 7 months after Alexa claimed she was bullied out of her life's purpose, advocacy, she's still collecting donations for that very cause. Her memberships remain active on both YouTube and Patreon. Her benefits still advertised, but the advocacy? Silent, absent, non-existent. How many people are continuing to support her, genuinely believing they're funding meaningful work, not realizing their money is vanishing into a vacuum of her self-made martyrdom? Even if it's just one person being misled, that's one too many. It's not just deceptive, it's truculent, exploitative, and disgraceful. If you're no longer doing the work, just be transparent about it. Close the memberships, remove the advocacy perks, tell people the truth. But of course, that would require the one thing Alexa refuses to do: take accountability. And so the illusion persists, the coffers stay open, and the people hoping to support change continue funding and action, all while Alexa remains silent, never once clarifying that the work they think they're supporting hasn't existed for months. This isn't just poor communication. It's calculated omission, and it's performance bleeding into grift. This isn't just about contradictions in storytelling. It's about patterns of behavior. For example, when some people have something to hide, they are more likely to respond irrationally, with hostility, excessive defensiveness, or deflection, rather than calmly addressing accusations. Psychological studies link this behavior to cognitive dissonance, fear of exposure, and self-preservation. Ironically, in trying to shield themselves, they often reveal far more than intended. Take the Britney Spears trailer story. Depending on when and where Alexa tells it, the stories shift like sand. In one version, she watches Britney lock the trailer door. In another, she only notices the door is locked when she tries to leave. Sometimes, Jamie Lynn is hiding in the back room from the start. Other times, she runs back there mid-chaos. These aren't minor lapses, they're completely different versions of the same event. If you don't believe me, feel free to check for yourself. I'll even provide a few links so you can hear the variations with your own ears. And then there's the comedy of errors that would be hilarious if it weren't so revealing. During her Guess Who series, Alexa proudly suggested one of her co-founders adopt the phrase Survivors United for her own organization, as though Alexa had just coined it. The absurdity isn't just in the claim itself, but in the fact that no one, not even her husband, stepped in to suggest she do a quick Google search. Watching her parade that phrase like it was a linguistic breakthrough was a masterclass in unintentional comedy. It's either unchecked self-importance, blissful naivety, or both. And this isn't an isolated incident, it's a pattern. Alexa consistently takes ordinary concepts, tweaks them slightly, and presents them as revolutionary. Maybe she genuinely believes she's innovating, maybe she just doesn't check. Either way, the result is the same: secondhand embarrassment for everyone else. Imagine me claiming YouTubers United will never be divided, and live streaming it like I've cracked the activist code. I get it. This is a rant. It's sarcastic, biting, and probably longer than it needs to be. But I can't shrug it off, because it's not just the phrase that's the issue, it's what it represents. A glaring lack of self-awareness that somehow goes unchecked. Let's look at the broader pattern. Kristen Herrera was allegedly a ruthless bully who got fired for tormenting Alexa during season 1 of Zoe 101. Yet decades later, Alexa is on social media gushing about her and urging fans to wish one of her favorite people in the world a happy birthday. Lindsay Shaw was her best friend until suddenly she wasn't. She was abusive. Her ex-husband, once described as one of the most caring people in her life, now labeled a predator. She claims she was bullied and abused by Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon executives in a back room, but then breaks down in tears because she didn't get invited to a casual, non-official reunion dinner. Let's be honest, if even half of what she claims happened actually did, the last thing she'd be mourning is a missed dinner invitation. She'd be relieved, grateful to be excluded, but that's not what this is about. These contradictions don't reflect a trauma survivor. They reflect someone who collects grievances, rewrites history based on her feelings in the moment, and launches crusades against people who no longer serve her narrative. And when that narrative is threatened, she flips the script every single time. At this point, I believe Alexa's goal isn't justice. It's vengeance. Vengeance for hurt feelings, payback for being left out, retribution for not being center stage. And the method is always the same. Paint the person as a predator, an abuser, or someone complicit in harm. Lather, rinse, repeat. Alexa embodies everything she claims to stand against: bullying, harassment, silencing survivors, weaponizing trauma, gaslighting dissent. It took me a while to realize that she doesn't just deflect these behaviors, she projects them. She accuses others of the very things she does, because they are a reflection of who she is. And if we're being honest, it seems like she doesn't particularly like that person either. There's something truly vile about taking your own worst traits and pinning them onto people who've done nothing but disagree with you. Just like you're entitled to your voice, others are entitled to theirs. Disagreement is not abuse. Criticism is not victim blaming. And someone saying you're wrong does not mean they support predators or hate women. So stop weaponizing social causes to shield yourself from accountability. Stop branding every differing opinion as harmful while cloaking your own harmful behavior in a banner of advocacy. If you want to be seen as a true activist, start by acting like one. That begins with integrity, not performative martyrdom. I've made mistakes in judgment before, but when I do, I own them, I learn, and I move forward. What I won't do is continue co-signing someone who weaponizes advocacy and victimhood to shield themselves from accountability. So no, I refuse to still say that I believe Alexa. And I'm okay saying that out loud, because unlike Alexa, I'm not a phony. To truly understand Alexa and the troubling intersection of trauma, power, and unchecked influence, we have to go further back. In Part 3, we'll unpack everything that led her to the advocacy space in the first place. The patterns, the relationships, the early red flags, and the contradictions that can no longer be ignored. I'm not above admitting when I'm wrong, but I'm also not done digging. The shovel went deeper than expected. In Part 3, I uncover something I did not expect to find, and what I've dug up might surprise you even more than it surprised me. So stay tuned, and I appreciate you watching. Take care.